Hello and welcome to a Peatland ACTION mini-series of video tutorials which aim to guide you through the process of completing the spatial data template. This is a mandatory part of the grant application process at both the beginning and end of a Peatland ACTION funded project. These videos aim to help both internal staff, agents, applicants and contractors to better understand the spatial data template and what the minimum requirements are. The first step is to navigate to the Peatland ACTION Spatial Data Guidance in support of your project webpage, and I'll provide this HTML in the video description below. Here you'll see some text, and this explains that we use the spatial data template in order to collect data in a consistent and structured format so that we can track and monitor restoration efforts nationally. Therefore, it really helps us if the template's used as intended with no additional columns or modifications made to any of the restricted values. So scrolling further down the page, you'll see an example of final report spatial data, and you can zoom in and have a look around here. You'll see that there's linear features and point features which have been mapped, and also some area-based restoration mapped using these blue polygons. Scrolling down on the page for the spatial data guidance, you'll see that there's the spatial data template packs, restoration footprint guidance, and the final report template. So if you expand the first spatial data template packs, you'll see that there's two options, an ArcGIS and a QGIS template pack. It's up to you which software you'd rather use. We recommend QGIS as the template has full functionality, the software is open source, and it will be the software that I'm using for these training videos. Beneath this, the restoration footprint guidance, if you expand this and click on this link, it'll redirect you to a web page where you can download the restoration footprint guidance document. However, it's worth noting that this is already contained within both of these two zip files, so you don't need to download it again unless you're just specifically looking for the restoration footprint guidance. And finally, the final report template directs you to a web page where you can download a Word document of the latest final report template, which is a requirement for any Peatland ACTION project when it comes to completion. A new set of spatial data reflecting the restoration undertaken on the ground is expected alongside the report. So if you go ahead and click on whichever software template pack you would like to use, it'll automatically download, and then I recommend relocating that zip file to a more suitable location. I've chosen my C drive. When extracting the zip file, you may encounter an error about file path lengths, in which case all you need to do is cancel the extraction, rename the zip file to a shorter name, and then extract again, and that should work. And keeping your folder names quite short is a useful way to mitigate against this. When you've extracted your zip file, you'll see that there's a Word document for the geospatial metadata and 3 PDF documents, which are all guidance documents, and then a project file and a geopackage file. So we recommend starting off by reading the spatial data template guidance. This provides a really useful overview, as well as how the project file is configured, a recommended workflow, and also a change list which highlights any updates in the most recent version. So this is a really good read for not only people new to the template, but also people who've used the template before. The second spatial data guidance PDF is a really useful PDF to have open whilst you're populating the GIS template. It gives you an introduction and then sets out spatial data requirements, including how the data that we collect is used, and also what the minimum requirements are for the spatial data. It talks about the mandatory layers, and if you scroll down, you'll find your layer description tables, which should match the tables in the GIS template, and you can see here really clearly when a column is mandatory, it's marked yes in the mandatory column in these tables here. And in some cases, such as the material used is only mandatory in a certain instance. So it's only mandatory if the restoration technique is a dam or a bund. And the final PDF guidance document to have a look at is the Restoration Footprints Guidance. So this provides some definitions and then also talks you through the steps for drawing your restoration footprint. And we've included a restoration footprint buffer tool in the latest update to make this a little bit easier for you. But there is still some manual clipping required for features such as roads, rivers, lakes, and non-peatland habitat. And there are other videos in this series which demonstrate adding data to the template, how to identify mandatory fields, how to generate restoration footprints, and self-QA. And all of these can be found on the NatureScot Peatland Action webpage.